NPR, the National Public Radio, or as some people call it, nakedly progressive radio, is, facing some criticism by the conservatives, including President Trump, who's trying to. We talked about this. We don't have time to explain the entire hierarchy of it, but there's an organization that the federal government funds, and that organization funds a lot of individual radio stations and TV stations that then purchase the syndicated NPR. Again, kind of complicated. President Trump is going after their funding. Natalie, I, I think a lot of people who were formerly on the left or even moderately on the right now maybe don't even mind NPR if they were true to their cause of, oh, well, we're down the middle. But unfortunately, there were zero people in the NPR newsroom that identified as conservatives or Republicans. What is this going to be welcomed by the majority of American people who kind of think, yeah, NPR has gone off the rails, and if they're as far left as they are now, they probably shouldn't deserve funding? Is that, you think that's something the American people will buy?
Yeah, I think it's welcomed by anyone who's not an unhinged progressive Democrat. I mean, there was Pew Research in 2019 that said that 87% of NPR's audience identifies as Democrat. And there was actually a really good, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with it, but there was a really good piece last year in Barry Weiss's Free Press by someone who had worked for NPR for 25 years, was a
Hmm.
liberal Trump hater. And he wrote kind of a tell all of how they lost their diverse audience. And for that, he was put on leave and then eventually kind of forced to resign because there was so much hostility. And if your audience doesn't represent the American people, by and large, which is what this man was admitting, who hates Donald Trump and is, again, a liberal raised by a lesbian, well, then why do you deserve our federal tax dollars? And of course, they're going to act like the sky is falling. But really, if you look at it, it's like PBS, their federal funding is 15% of PBS's budget and 1% of NPR's. So everything's probably going to continue as normal, and they're going to keep being a mouthpiece for the DNC. And no one's even going to notice that this happened or that federal funding was cut. But of course, they're going to act like, the sky's falling.
Well, that's the thing, is direct federal funding is a small percentage of it, but they go this roundabout way, and it actually funds like closer to half, if not 60% of it. Chris,
Oh,
I'm curious here, so do you think in order to attempt to avert Trump pulling funding, NPR will try and go more of the conservative route, or at least be somewhat down the middle? And if they're going to do that, they're going to have to hire people that may be more conservative. And if they do that, would you be willing to take your radio show to NPR in order to hopefully get them to avert the gaze of President Trump trying to cut their funding?
No, and I don't even know what that would look like if they tried to be more conservative or more down the middle. I feel like we wouldn't agree with it anyway. But I mean, without the taxpayers funding this stuff, how are we going to get hard-hitting reporting from NPR, like stories about cannibalism and eating women's placentas? That's a real story, by the way. How are we going to learn about all of the wonderful things that the left is doing and all the evil things that the Trump administration is doing? It's funny, when they did the RNC and the DNC, it was 72% negative coverage for the RNC, 88% positive coverage for the DNC. This is not a nonpartisan organization by any stretch of the imagination. And I think if they had to monetize it, and we've talked about this before, if they had to monetize it in the same way that my radio station monetizes it privately, I think that they would fail. I'm more excited about the PBS losing their funding.
Mm.
As a dad of 4 kids, I am so frustrated when Elmo is pushing vaccines and Pride Month, and when Arthur is telling kids that white people are racist. I don't think that has any place in a kid's show. And I don't think any parent who was raised on PBS, if they're not paying attention, is safe to leave their kids watching PBS unguarded.
Yeah.
So I'm more looking forward to that aspect of it. I think adults can figure things out for themselves for the most part. But the kids, going after the kids, is always much more touchy for me.
Yeah, until they start airing reruns of Mr. Rogers, I don't think I'm letting my kids watch PBS anytime
Amen.
soon.